Hello everyone, first news update for 19th of December, and I will start with the breaking news for this moment, which is that former Kiev regime, in reality UK, launched yet another long-range missile strike deep into Russian territory, according to some reports in independent media. And well, let's go through some details here, because it is obviously a significant development. So firstly, yesterday, governor of Rostov region, Yuri Slusar, reported on his Telegram channel that Russian air defense systems intercepted 3 missiles over the Kamensk-Shahtinsk district of the region, and 1 missile hit a thermal warehouse in the area. And when I checked on the map area where these missiles were intercepted and their potential place of deployment of, let's say, long-range MLRS systems of the Kiev regime, it has become clear for me that MLRS could not be used. So some other weapon system was used, other missiles that have a longer range than, let's say, 50, 70, or even 100 kilometers. And in my yesterday's second update on Patreon, I spoke about what I think about it, and I predicted most likely this was, or potentially this was, yet another long-range strike deep into Russian territory with their Western-made long-range missile systems. And I was correct, because later on, this video started circulated on internet, on which you can see when local in Rostov region is filming some fragments of intercepted missiles. And according to some military experts, these fragments belong to a British Storm Shadow missile. All right. And after that, I saw on one of their Telegram channels a report based on Rebar think tank that about 10 missiles, long-range cruise missiles, were launched to strike deep into Russian territory in Rostov region. Certain number of those missiles, if not all, were intercepted, and this is actually factual. At least some of those missiles definitely was intercepted, and this local in Rostov region was filming these fragments of their storm shadows. But potentially some missiles managed to go through air defense systems. Hard to tell, obviously. Unfortunately, for this moment, and now it's 9:10 in the morning on 19th of December, Russian Defense Ministry or any other state institution did not yet comment on this matter, did not confirm that Storm Shadow missiles were used, and therefore we have no detailed information about casualties, if there were any casualties as a result of this strike, or damage that potentially was done to on the ground. But all the indicators are that well, Russia was attacked once again with this Western long-range missile systems. And by the way, to continue on the matter, this morning Russian media reported that Russian air defense systems during the nighttime intercepted more than 30 drones and 3 missiles, yet again over the Rostov region. So Rostov region yesterday and today was targeted severely. And yet again, no details about what kind of missiles this there was that Russian air defense systems intercepted over the Rostov region. Maybe yet again, and most likely yet again, long-range Western missiles were used. Although theoretically speaking, of course, Kiev regime could deploy its own missiles, Soviet-era missiles, .uz, for example, if they still have any left, or air defense systems missiles that are transformed to be able to strike ground targets. So during the day, most likely we will learn some more about this development. And of course, I will share additional information on my Telegram, Twitter X pages, and in next updates. Most likely, I will have a second update today also on my Patreon and Boosty. And so yes, that's what is known for now, right? Question is obviously, will Russia retaliate this time for this long-range strike deep into Russian territory, as it was promised or stated by many high-ranking officials earlier in regards to such strikes? And I don't know. My answer is simple. I don't know, dear friends. Probably not. Probably some strikes will be done on Kiev-controlled territory, and the Russian Defense Ministry will call that retaliation, as it happened during the previous Russian missile and drone strikes. But of course, these strikes on Kiev-controlled territory are not going to deter Western ruling class. That is the main point here. And without deterring Western ruling class, unfortunately, it seems to be impossible, to me at least, to avoid next phase of escalation that Western ruling class is preparing, which is a transformation of the Kiev regime into a nuclear-armed regime. And if now we are facing long-range, we as a Russian society are facing this long-range strikes with the drones and the missiles in 3 to 5 months' time, approximately, maybe even earlier than that. Unfortunately, there is a high risk that we will face a risk that one of these drones or missiles will be tipped with their atomic bomb, with their nuclear warhead, or dirty bomb, as they are called also, right? And so yes, that's the situation. By the way, let's see what kind of additional news will be available during the day. But it is clear that the Western ruling class is escalating, and unfortunately, my earlier prediction that if Russian leadership will not act strongly against organizers of these strikes, against military assets of the countries that are actually conducting these long-range strikes, and if Russia will basically not deter Western ruling class, then in that case, these long-range missile strikes will become kind of daily routine, as the drone strikes are, as long-range drone strikes are, and it is the case now. I was correct, right? Every other day now, these long-range missile strikes are happening, and the process will continue. Me personally, I don't think Russia will retaliate against military assets of the Western NATO member states that are directly involved on this strike. So therefore, Western ruling class will feel no pressure, and of course they will not de-escalate. And the Russian strikes on Kiev-controlled territory, I mean, don't really bother them in any way, shape, or form, right? So that's the situation. By the way, unfortunately, due to this constant exercise of restraint by Russian leadership, risks, in my personal opinion, yet again, risks that Western ruling class will go ahead with their next phase of escalation, which is yet again transformation of the Kiev regime into a nuclear armed regime, seems to be inevitable. Western ruling class will go ahead with that, most likely. And yesterday, during the second update, I shared this information also from TASS News Agency about statements of Russian ambassador in United Kingdom, Andrei Kalin, and in this statement he said that London kind of start acting little bit more cautiously after Russian armed forces test fired Oreshnik intermediate range hypersonic missile system. And while commenting on this news, I said yesterday that I have to disagree with the ambassador, because Western ruling class, we already seeing this many times, that Western ruling class their puppets in the governments of collective West or elsewhere, they are unable to learn, right? They are immune to any warnings, any strong statements, basically, and therefore, I said yesterday that most likely ambassador is mistaken, and London will demonstrate that in near future. And I was correct, by the way. After several hours, this video starts circulating with the fragments of Storm Shadow in Rostov region. So I was proven right right away, straight away yesterday. Of course, London is unable to learn nothing, by the way. Western ruling class and their puppets, they are emboldened. They are emboldened with all that impunity with which they are acting against Russia. And I guess they see no reason why to de-escalate, because they have no fear that Russia will really retaliate against them. And as I already said, no matter how many times Russia gonna conduct strikes on Kiev-controlled territory, West just don't cares, right? It will not deter Western ruling class. So it is what it is, by the way. Unfortunately, because of this restraint of the Russian leadership, which was a applaud in the world, right? At some point, because Russian leadership clearly demonstrated that they are adults in the room. But after Western ruling elites start escalating further and further, and after these long-range strikes, start becoming a kind of daily routine. Nowadays, I guess hardly anyone can really understand this restraint, right? People are trying to justify it. Here in Russia and outside of Russia, many people are trying to justify. Argument is that Russia is winning anyway, so why escalate? Also, argument is that if Russia will use strong force, then West will retaliate even with more force, and eventually world may end up in a nuclear exchange. Some other arguments, and I can see those arguments, by the way, but unfortunately, my reading of big picture is such, as I already said, that if Russia will not deter Western ruling class right now because they authorize next phase of escalation, then Russia will face nuclear threat anyways, because our next phase of this escalation, this proxy war that West is waging against Russia, is transformation of Kiev regime into a nuclear armed regime. And do you really want to see atomic bombs in hands of Kiev regime, formally in hands of Kiev regime? If Western ruling class now is saying that, you know what, this is not us, that these long-range strikes are done with our weapons, it's a Kiev regime. At that point, when they will make it official that Kiev has nuclear weapons, they will say, you know what, we tell them not to use atomic bombs, but they did it anyways. It's nothing to do with us. And will Russia take that argument, or Russian leadership, then again? So in my personal opinion, to avoid the extreme level of escalation, Western ruling class has to be deterred now, even if that means some escalatory steps to be taken, right? I struggle to wrap my mind around their thinking process in the Kremlin, what they are thinking there. Are they really not realizing what is going on? Do they really want to see nuclear armed Kiev regime? I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't get it. I spent almost entire my adult life, by the way, not almost, literally entire my adult life in journalism, and I worked, all my life I'm watching with news, right? I'm trying to analyze news, find their connections between the different developments that, on surface might look like don't really connected, but they are. And my experience tells me that unfortunately right now restraint that Russian leadership is demonstrating is absolutely unjust and creates more risks for Russia. That's my take. And I don't know, man, what kind of aides Russian president has, what kind of analysts are there, but I mean, they already made grave mistakes, by the way, while not responding strongly on a first long-range strike deep into Russian territory. But it is not too late. It is not too late. So I hope these people in the Kremlin or wherever that are decision makers will realize that if they are not stopping Western elites now by taking action that will deter them, then in a couple of months' time we will face next phase of escalation, and the regime suddenly will become a nuclear armed regime, and then I don't think Russians gonna be in a more safer place at that point, right? Russian citizens. Anyways, dear friends, maybe yet again, maybe I'm missing something, that may be the case, obviously. Of course, Russian leadership, they have all their access to all the information that there is, classified or non-classified, everything. And I really hope they know what they're doing, man, because I definitely don't want to see nuclear armed Ukraine. I definitely don't want to see next phase of escalation, because it will be hard to even describe how dangerous that situation would be for Russian citizens, first of all, obviously, for citizens of for residents of Kiev-controlled territory, and for rest of the world. So exactly to avoid risks of a full-scale nuclear war with the West, Russia has to deter Western ruling class right now, even if that means some strong escalatory steps to be taken. Escalate to avoid further escalation. I will say that way. I don't know. I hope my English is good enough to, share my vision of the situation, right? Anyways, let's continue with some more news. But me personally, as just one ordinary citizen, I definitely cannot any longer understand this constant restraint that Russian leadership is demonstrating. I think that restraint actually puts us in more danger. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but that's how I see. And meanwhile, when it comes to these long-range strikes deep into Russian territory, by the way, we have also this report that overnight, early hours of this morning, Russian air defense systems on duty intercepted 84 drones in total. 84 drones. And as I already said, reports are that number of missiles were also launched during the night, or potentially during the day. We will learn some more about it, and of course I will share additional information on that. But when it comes to this particular news, TASS news agency is reporting that 36 drones were intercepted over the Rostov region. As I said, this region became under heavy attack yesterday during night and the early hours this morning. 21 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 14 drones over the Belgorod region. Also, drones were intercepted over the Voronezh region, Kursk region, Tambov region, and even over the Krasnodar region. In this report of TASS, no mentioning of missiles being launched deep into Russian territory, although earlier report, by the way, earlier report suggests, which is based on statement of Yuri Slusar, this earlier report suggests that more than 30 drones were intercepted and at least 3 missiles. So that's how it is. Meanwhile, of course, I have to share this news, by the way, from RIA Novosti about statements of Deputy of the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov. I know many members of our community, and I guess many people worldwide, if not majority, are kind of sick and tired of some warnings and statements from Russia. From Russian leadership, let's say, political and military leadership, but still, by the way, there are certain statements, certain developments that needs to be highlighted. And in this particular case, I want to pay attention to this news because this statement comes from high-ranking Russian diplomats, and Russian diplomats usually are demonstrating extreme restraint when it comes to rhetoric, right? When it comes to statements, there are diplomats all the way, right? So the news is that the risk that Western countries, led by United States, create on the borders of Russia may lead to the fact that the question of the use of nuclear weapons by Russian Federation will arise in practice. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov stated there, and then quote here, as a result of their increasingly reckless actions of the West, there are tangible risks of the situation moving to their state where the question of using nuclear weapons may arise in practice, and not speculatively, as they say, but in a full accordance with the doctrinal guidelines we have declared, Ryabkov said, speaking at the Valdai discussion club. So strong words, by the way, strong words, strong warning for sure. And although not really surprising to us, in the sense that veterans of our community know, remember, I guess that I was saying for quite a long time that due to constant escalation by the Western ruling class, at some point Moscow may find itself in a situation, in a corner, sort of, where when they will see no way out but to deploy some extreme force. And I guess Ryabkov is actually saying the same with the different words. I believe Russian leadership already is in that situation when some extreme force is needed. I'm not saying that nuclear weapons have to be deployed necessarily, but something has to be done to deter Western ruling class. And strikes on Kyiv-controlled territory definitely not enough, because Western ruling class have no care about Ukraine, never did and never will, right? Ukraine for them is a proxy, just a territory with some people that can be used, abused, and sacrificed. That's all. That's how Western ruling class sees not just Ukraine, but any other country, by the way, including Russia. Right? So something definitely has to be done right now to deter Western ruling class. Otherwise, I'm telling you, man, they're gonna authorize next phase of escalation with Russia in short time. And that next phase is transformation of Kyiv regime into a nuclear armed regime. And by the way, ground for this already has been prepared, right? There was many statements, there was many articles in media every other day some psycho in Ukraine, so-called Ukraine, is coming out with statements that they have to get nuclear weapons. Every other day, additional articles are published in the West that Kyiv regime may, acquire nuclear weapons to protect itself if Western assistance will weaken and stuff. So situation is prepared for that transformation by the Western ruling class. And I don't think it is in Russia's best interests to allow Western ruling class to go ahead with that next phase of escalation, right? So Rybkov, being diplomat, of course, still is quite cautious in his statements, but I will interpret his words as West is forcing us basically to use some extreme force, which is true. And enough talks, man. Just do it. Just do it. I'm not saying that you have to use nuclear weapons necessarily. There are some other ways also, right? There's some other ways also. But Western ruling class has to be deterred for sake of humanity, by the way, because the Western ruling class is an existential threat for everybody. For everybody in this world. Let's continue now with some more news, and we have this report that from RT that Trump's a Ukraine envoy condemns murder of Russian general. Well, the assassination of the Russian general Igor Kirillov in Moscow probably won't impede peace talks, but was not a good idea at all for Kiev. US President-elect Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Kat Kellogg, has stated in an interview with the Fox News on Wednesday. Kellogg was asked whether the murder of the Kirillov would hinder peace talks between Moscow and Kiev, which Trump hopes to broker once inaugurated next month, and then quote, "I don't think it's really a setback," he responded, "but I would say this, there are rules of warfare and there are certain things that you just kind of don't do. When you are killing flag officers, generals, general officers, admirals or generals in their hometown, it's kind of like you are extending it, and I don't think it's really smart to do it. It's not kind of the rules of war." He can continue reiterating that the bombing was not a good idea at all, in his opinion. In light of the, I watched the video, by the way. I watched the fragment of this interview, and this person, this Kat Kellogg, said many stuff there. Not just this sentences about killing of Russian general, but he went to say that he misled basically viewers of the Fox News by saying that casualty rate is 5-1 in Ukraine's favor on the battlefield. He said that Kyiv regime lost 40 or 50,000 military personnel, while Russia lost, I don't know, he mentioned, I believe, 400,000 or something. He clearly, either misinformed and or ill-informed, and in that case, what the hell he will do on the position that he probably will be appointed by Trump. That's the question. Or if he is not ill-informed, then he is intentionally lying to public, right? Either way, in my personal opinion, this person is definitely not fit for the job. He cannot even say straight that terrorism is not the way to go. He cannot condemn terrorist attack on that the regime conducted in Moscow just 2 days ago. So if it was up to me, I would not even let him to Russia. I wouldn't, because he is clearly not a person with whom you can have a real meaningful talk. That's my take, by the way. This is a clearly liar and a disgraceful individual, in my personal opinion. And that's why I'm saying, by the way, that if Russian leadership thinks that once Trump will get to office, situation will de-escalate, they are mistaken, in my personal opinion, that this is a grave mistake to think that way. Once Trump will get to office, probably situation will even further escalate. Most likely, situation will escalate even further, and Trump will be in office. If Russia will not deter Western ruling elites right now, then it will be Trump in office when Western ruling class will initiate this next phase of escalation, which is transformation of the Kiev regime into a nuclear armed regime, right? So therefore, I really don't understand why anybody would think in the Kremlin or in Russian government in general that, well, Trump is some sort of a peacekeeper, really, and once he is in office, then situation all of a sudden, miraculously gonna de-escalate. This is nonsense, by the way. Nothing gonna de-escalate on its own. You have to force Western ruling class to face reality. You have to force Western ruling class to de-escalate. Because only language they understand is a force, nothing else. Literally nothing else. Anyways, let's continue. And we have RIA Novosti's report here that very same deputy of the foreign minister, Sergei Ryabkov, stated while talking to journalists that Russia is open to hear what kind of proposals Washington will have once Trump is in office. He was, talking about Kellogg exactly. You know what? Let's translate. Let's translate this, man. It is good that Russia is open for improvement of the relationships with any country in this world if there is some issues. And definitely there are many issues in the relationships between Russia and US, but so Russia is ready to consider any proposals from the new US administration on how to improve relations between the two countries. But so far there is no understanding about this or about their intentions of the US special envoy Kat Kellogg to establish contact with Russia or Ukraine. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said, then, quote, we have no understanding, first of all, about the schedule of General Kellogg's assumption of the office, the position that President-elect Trump outlined to him as the direction of his activities, Ryabkov told the reporters. Deputy Foreign Minister added that Russia is ready to consider any proposals to restore at least a relative normality in relations between Russia and US. Okay, it is good that door is open for improving relationships, at least to bring some normality into relationships between Russia and US or Russia and West. That's a good stuff, but but then again, let's be realistic here. Western ruling class currently and current elites in the West, political elites, they cannot be trusted, right? They cannot be trusted, and I think, objectively speaking, it will take at least decades, at least 2 or 3 decades, right? And change of elites in the West to create situation when future, not just current, but future leaders of the Russia will start trusting their Western colleagues. Decades at least, by the way, because Western ruling elites break almost every deal that they sign up for, right? So therefore, okay, on their level of statements, yeah, it sounds good that we are open to improve relationships and stuff, but How are you gonna do it when you cannot trust your opponents? I mean, literally, you cannot trust a single word from them, right? So it's just a wishful thinking and diplomatic politeness. That's all it is, right? Because there can be no improvements of the relationships between Russia and the West. I'm talking about politically, by the way. I'm not talking about people. I never talk about people, by the way. Hopefully, relationships between the peoples will improve on its own, right? But when it comes to political relationships, I don't see any opportunity for improvements there, at least for next several decades, at least. Some more news, and for example, this one from TASS News Agency, that the European Commission allocated another 4.1 billion euros from fund of support of Ukraine to a Kiev regime. Let's translate this sentence here. So European Commission transferred to Kiev a tranche of 4.1 billion euros from the European Support Fund for Ukraine, bringing the volume of macrofinancial lending under this line to 16.1 billion. The press service of the European Commission reported. So yes, another 4.1 billion taxpayers' money being stolen by Brussels bureaucrats. Okay. Of course, they will justify this by saying that they're going to use frozen Russian assets or profits from the frozen Russian assets to secure these tranches and stuff. But still, by the way, right now they are taking from Europeans, citizens of EU member states, and giving that money, billions and billions, to a most corrupt regime in this world. And they're also enriching themselves, right? And their military industrial complex. That's all it is, man. And we all know this. RIA Novosti is also reporting that, well, in Germany, NATO command start working that will oversee all their assistance for a Kiev regime. Earlier, there was reports that NATO is overtaking the US when it comes to coordinating military aid to Kiev regime, and I guess this step is made in that direction exactly. So NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte said that their alliance's command for coordinating assistance to Ukraine has been launched in Germany. The NATO assistance and their training command for Ukraine is already up and running, he said at the joint press conference in Brussels with the Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda. So we will see what changes that will bring, if any. Sklad newspaper is also reporting that according to Reuters news agency, Europe is still planning, by the way, number of countries in Europe are still planning to deploy some 100,000 peacekeepers into Ukraine. This topic is active for how long now, isn't it? For at least several weeks. Let's read it first. So several European countries are considering sending a contingent of 100,000 troops to Ukraine, Reuters reported, citing sources among officials in Ukraine and Europe. Such plans can be implemented in the event of a ceasefire or peace in Ukraine. Germany, Britain, France, Italy, and Poland could take part in the formation of this military coalition, reports Российская газета. And yet again, dear friends, I said many times before that in my personal opinion, and of course I'm highlighting always that I might be wrong, but of course, isn't it? So therefore, you should keep in mind that my opinion is just my opinion, right? My reading of the big picture is just my reading of the big picture. I could be wrong, obviously, and therefore take any my opinion with a mountain of salt if you want to. But in my personal opinion, and this is a Levan Gudadze opinion program, isn't it? News and commentary. And so to comment this topic, as I said, quite a number of times before, Russia, at least formally, that's what officially was said here in Russia, that for Russia it is absolutely unacceptable this conflict to be freezed. Moscow is all about complete resolution of this conflict, so that there will be no freezing, just a full end of the hostilities forever, ideally. And Russia was also clear that there will be no NATO troops into Ukraine in any way, shape, or form, right? Especially on the borders with Russia, when it comes to this former Soviet Republic. And I think her. I don't know, man. I don't know. Western ruling elites demonstrated many times that they don't really care what Moscow thinks, right? What Moscow's position is. And therefore, maybe they really are considering to launch these 100,000 strong troops into Ukraine. And if they will stay just in Western Ukraine, okay. I mean, that's one story. We might hear some strong statements from Russia, but I don't think, and we might even see some clashes, some military escalation, local scale military escalation that will not resolve in a full scale war between Russia and NATO. But if NATO member states will deploy their troops into the so-called Ukraine and move out of Western Ukraine, then that's a big trouble. But that's a big trouble because most likely in that case we will see direct clashes between Russia and NATO troops. Maybe even full-scale war. Because outside of Western Ukraine, NATO troops, as far as I understand, is absolutely unacceptable for Russia, and Russian leadership is on same page. Although, officially, Russian position is that no NATO troops in Ukraine, period. Right? But, I can, in my interpretation of these statements, Moscow would not really care that much if Western Ukraine will be occupied by NATO, right? And they're eventually reclaimed by Poland, Hungary, and Romania. But rest of the territory of this former Soviet Republic is a no-go zone for NATO. That's for sure. So therefore, I mean, let's wait and see what all this narrative was created about these 100,000 troops that they want to send. Maybe they want to send these troops into Western Ukraine, and these articles and statements are preparations for occupation of the Western Ukraine. Okay, in that case, I can understand what's going on. But if they really want to send them out of Western Ukraine, deep towards eastwards, then that's a trouble. They are inviting trouble on themselves, most likely. Yet again, I don't know. Also, dear friends, Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that President of Russian Federation will have a direct line today. This is an event that takes place every year for quite a while now, when the Russian president in live during the live broadcast is answering questions, not just from journalists, but first of all from the public, from all around Russia, by the way. That's why it called a direct line, прямая линия. And today, this direct line will take place, and of course, I will pay attention to it, and if some, and I will share information about statements of Putin in next updates, let's say that way. And dear friends, update is already quite long, so therefore I have to finish it now. As I said, later on I will publish second news update on my Patreon and the booster pages, and of course more news will be there, including latest updates that Russian media will provide us, public. And so yes, this is it for now. Hopefully you will find this video interesting, useful, informative. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary. If you noticed, YouTube's algorithm crashed my yesterday's update. I don't know what exactly YouTube's algorithm did not like, but my video was crashed. Maybe today we will do a little better to reach wider audience. So if you can, dear friends, please click that like button, leave some commentary, share information about my channel with your friends in real life or on internet, share videos. And if you like my work, if you think I deserve to be in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support this project with small donations through PayPal, Boosty, by subscribing to my Patreon page, or through crypto. All the links under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.